Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar today on the new threat to company culture post-COVID. Before we get started, I just want to do a few introductions because we've got a few different people on the call today. So I'm Greg Guilford. I'm the CEO of HR Solutions, and we have Steve Middleton, who's the Senior Business Engagement Manager at Engagement Multiplier. We also have Atim Arden, who's here to support with any technical questions. We try to make these webinars as interactive as possible, and those of you who've been on them before know that you are all on mute at the moment. So that's partly so that Steve can deliver his presentation without interruption, but we do want you to ask questions, and we'll save some space at the end of Steve's session to do that. As we go, if anything sort of pops into your mind that you want to ask Steve, then please jot it down using the chat panel that you can see on the screen in front of you. Your panel should look almost identical to that. If you put your questions in there as we go, then we'll save them up and ask Steve them at the end of the session. We also have a couple of polls that we're running in the session, so please feel free to enjoy those polls and get as much engagement as possible. We've obviously been doing these webinars to try and provide some additional content for our audience in COVID. So please do make as much notes as you want during this session and refer back to them at a later date. So the first poll we're going to have is going to come on your screen in a second. And that is really simply asking you, has your culture changed during COVID-19? And you've only got 3 options to choose from, and that's yes, no, and don't know. So about 80% of you have completed it so far. So just give a few more seconds and then I'll share those results with you. Okay, I'm going to share those results now. So you can see 50% of you said yes, 13% said no, and 38% of you said you don't know. Okay, I'm now going to pass you over to Steve, who's going to deliver the rest of the webinar.
Yes, good morning, and thank you, Greg. And one of the interesting things about this webinar is that Greg's going to be pushing the buttons while I'm doing the speaking. So, Greg, if you just move on to the next slide for me, that'll be great. So, yeah, for those that don't know who we are, as Greg mentioned earlier, my name's Steve Middleton. I'm the Senior Business Engagement Manager here at Engagement Multiplier. Well, what does that mean? Well, it just means I've been here the longest. I've been here almost since the inception of the business. And it's, again, as a result of the work that the founder and I have been doing, that we have now a global network of thousands of clients all over the world working with us. At Engagement Multiplier, we work with successful business owners, entrepreneurs, leaders, managers, HR professionals all over the world that truly understand the power and impact of having an engaged workforce. And our very simple technology helps you to understand the truth. And I say this with some honesty. It's the truth of what's really going on inside the business, but also it's about unlocking that hidden potential. What ideas have your team members got that can help us to create a better, more engaged workforce and deliver a better client experience? And today, taking on all the evidence that we've learnt as a result of the work we've been doing throughout the pandemic, but also working with thousands of clients and looking at lots of data, I'm excited to share with you the data we have surrounding this looming culture crisis. So next slide, Greg. So a short agenda for today. So I just want to, this is going to be a very short, hopefully a high value presentation. The agenda, first of all, is going to start with the evidence, but also what I mean by the looming culture crisis and why it's so critically important right now. What the 4 elements are that contribute towards the culture crisis, but also share with you an elegant solution for you and potentially those that you're working with. And one thing we're delighted to be able to share with you as a result of the relationship we have with Greg and his team is that well, I'm not here to sell you anything today. I'm going to offer you free access to our technology that can help you to get ahead of what is this culture crisis. And then, like Greg mentioned earlier, we want to make sure that this presentation is of most value to each and every one of you. So should you have any questions at all, please feel free to submit them using the Q&A tab on the right-hand side of your screen. So Greg, let's go into the evidence, which is the next slide. So let's look at the evidence. So 61% of leaders right now are saying that their teams are thriving. However, if we look beyond that, you'll see here there are some stats which paint a different picture. 35% of employees say that their team's mental health is not good. 41% of employees are contemplating a new job. I mean, that's staggering. 64% of new employees, so those that have been in the business less than a year, are saying that they're struggling. Only 17% of employees say that morale is very good. And then finally, 54% of surveyed employees feel overworked. So there is a great misperception between what we think as leaders to what maybe the reality is from your teams and from your employees, which is why it's important to understand what's really going on. Next slide, Greg. So the looming culture crisis, what do I mean by this? Well, I think we can all agree that without going into detail, this last 12 months and even longer for some has been challenging. As businesses, we've had to pivot very quickly, find new ways of operating, new ways to retain and build our client banks, etc. And whilst we've, in most cases, done that very successfully, what many have not had the opportunity to do is actually look at it from an employee's perspective. And what we do now know is that employees are looking at the world in a very different way to what they did 12 months ago. And that's not just impacting themselves, but it's also impacting how they show up for work. And let's also remember there are various forces now in play which are eroding our company culture. So this is what we mean by the looming culture crisis. As business leaders, we just need to get ahead of it. And now's the time, particularly as it's the 11th hour, as we're now looking to get out on the back of the pandemic and some normality is looking to return. Next slide, Greg. So the looming culture crisis, just to go into a little bit more detail, as businesses, we've been focused on the crisis from a business and from a client perspective. And some of this will be true for you, retaining clients, looking at ways of preserving cash, securing loans, financing, shifting teams from furlough, working from home, etc. And I'm sure there are other examples that you can share. If you can just click again, Greg, but you'll see most haven't been thinking about this from an employee perspective. Next slide, Greg. But what I can tell you is that employees are fragile. Company culture is stressed. And if you go on to the next slide, Greg, you'll see here that what I want to share with you today, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on each of these. There really are 4 forces right now that are eroding the company culture. And highlighted here: fatigue, misalignment, resistance, and misunderstanding. And Greg, if we just go to the next slide, I just want to cover off with you first what I mean by fatigue. And fatigue and burnout, actually, 2 very real, but 2 very different challenges that exist in business. And if you look at the right-hand side, staggering to see that we had a 33% increase in burnout throughout 2020. So what do I mean by fatigue and burnout? Well, fatigue means, as an employee, I'm tired. I probably need a break, a few days off or an extended weekend. Burnout is that I'm done. So if we've seen a 33% increase in burnout, it ultimately means there's a 33% increase in the number of people in your team that maybe are feeling like there are other opportunities out there rather than working within your organization. And it's not about the people, it's about the environment. We all have an opportunity to create an environment that does not encourage either fatigue or burnout. If we can move on, Greg. Misalignment. So misalignment, this is something that, employer expectations are misaligned, is what I mean by this. So as we've gone through this pandemic and we now look to emerge from it, many companies have adopted necessary austerity measures. We've curbed pay rises, bonuses, and other perks. What the important thing here is that as we've been doing that, we've had teams of people working really hard, adapting very quickly, taking on these new measures. But we need to make sure if there is a disconnect without alignment, we're in danger of losing our best talent. So if any of this is going to stay, or if any of this is going to change moving forward, we need to make sure that we're continuously keeping our teams connected to what is happening in the business. Next one, Greg. Resistance. Oh, go back. Resistance. So this is very much about the resistance to returning to the workplace. Now, I can promise you within your teams, you'll have maybe employees that can't wait to get back into the office, or maybe you're back in the office already, and they will act as if COVID never happened. You will also have people that are the complete opposite, in that they're very nervous about any interaction with individuals and nervous about coming back to the office, and then everything in between. But what is absolutely true, and something that we need to be aware of, is that if we can't find a way to make the new normal work for our employees, they will find a way to make it work elsewhere. So I'm not saying it's right to return to the office. I'm not saying it's wrong to return to the office. What I'm saying is that I think we need to be open to the fact that we need to be flexible, and consistently flexible. So whatever might be right today, just be willing to adapt and amend it depending on how, again, your team react and how they feel around these certain circumstances. Moving on to the next one. Misunderstanding. Misunderstandings. This is really interesting, because what we've proven throughout this pandemic is that employees can make big changes and quickly. Employers. Leaders can prioritize employees' health and well-being. And, you know, it's a shame it's taken a pandemic to do that, but we've seen a staggering improvement, a huge impact around how leaders are now committing to their employees. And organizations can focus on employee engagement. I mean, as an organization, we've had a record 12 months, which is fabulous for us, but also demonstrates that, again, businesses are very much now focused on this. But employees will expect some of these changes to be permanent. And actually, I think part of this emerging stronger from the pandemic is about helping us to understand, so, okay, which of these changes have had a real impact? And if so, we need to make sure that they continue way beyond the pandemic. And then finally, so what are the ongoing challenges for leaders outside of those four forces? Well, and I'm just going to highlight the very top there, a sense of belonging. Let me just get rid of this call. There we are. So what is absolutely important right now for any business leader is this sense of belonging. We've seen a huge increase and the need for this from employees. And what we mean by belonging is that it's this sense of purpose, that we're part of something greater than just a paycheck that we get at the end of any working day or any working week or month. And again, just to expand on that a little bit more, think about the fact that we've had lots of workers either working remotely or within social distancing guidelines. And, you know, and for those reasons, our culture has been stretched or diluted. In fact, it's become very challenging to retain that culture. And if that culture is missing, then your employees are thinking of their role in terms of how they're paid, but also whether they enjoy what they do. They're not thinking about the future of the business in terms of the culture and the business and that sense of belonging, something that I'm part of. So again, we need to work harder as business leaders to create that sense of belonging. And there are certain things you can do to encourage that. Moving on, Greg. So the four forces, to remind you: fatigue, misalignment, resistance, misunderstanding, that sense of belonging that we need to create within the workforce. Left unaddressed, these could create some really nasty, unexpected surprises. Having gone through 12 months of some unexpected surprises, I'm sure we're all ready for some normality to return. So to do that, we need to get ahead. Next slide, Greg. So bear with me 1 second. For those that know Engagement Multiplier, and in fact, I know that we've done a number of presentations with your audience, Greg, and back in March last year, I remember when I first stated this to your audience, and we said, we can't predict the future. That's largely still true today. But if we can accurately learn from the past, we can confidently act in the present And this is what will enable us to thrive in the future. So the reason why I state this is that we still don't know what the future looks like. And anybody that promises they have the answer, they're either lying to you or they have a crystal ball. And equally, I've never yet met someone who has a crystal ball that actually works. So they're possibly lying to you as well. This is about how we can accurately learn. So let's take the data from the business. Let's understand how our teams really feel, because that will help us to make those smart decisions that will ultimately enable us to thrive in the future. So it's with this accurate data that you can avoid falling victim to what is the looming culture crisis. Next slide, Greg. So I want to now introduce you to an elegant solution. So please know, like I said at the very beginning of this, I'm not here to sell you anything at all. This is an opportunity for you to utilize our technology in the same way it's been utilized by thousands of businesses all over the world. In fact, Greg and how we got together is that he was a customer of ours using our technology. And when I talk about our platform, it's an incredibly straightforward technology that enables business owners, leaders, team members to work together to measure and improve culture, morale, productivity, and performance. And in this current climate, it's incredibly important. So I just want to share with you now a couple of screens. So you can move on to the next one, Greg, to give you an insight of what this looks like. Now, I appreciate this is quite small potentially on your screens, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but it's these dials that will ultimately enable you as business leaders to understand where you need to focus in your business. There are 6 fundamentals that we measure that we know not just contribute towards an engaged workforce, but contribute towards an overall engagement score that we're also going to drive for you. And they are the purpose of your business. So at the heart and at the foundation of any engaged organization, there has to be an engaged purpose. And you can see in this example here, we have a company that's broken their team down by length of service, by teams, by locations. And again, if you carry on down the report, this is just a still from a screen, but it continues to break down to various groups and teams in the business. But when I look at this, it's clear that Nigel's team, for example, are not as connected to purpose, that first row of columns, as the rest of the organization. But then we move across the other 5. We've got, as owners and as a business, how are we performing? So we can, again, see which of our teams perceive us as business owners, slightly behind that of everybody else. So we're applying focus for business owners. But also as leaders, this is about helping you to become better leaders. So which of our leaders are being scored really high that we can maybe learn from? And where do we have leaders that maybe need some support? So again, don't like to pick on poor Nigel here, but his team perceive him as a business leader as being fragmented. Now, I've never met a business that would be delighted to know they have a fragmented leader in their business, but neither have I ever met a leader that would be delighted to know that they're being perceived as fragmented. So again, the technology will highlight that for you amongst other dimensions. But I also want to if you can go to the next screen for me, Greg. So here we've got, we also capture team feedback, but we capture this for you in a very unique way. So what I mean by that is you'll see here that we've got open responses from your employees. This is in response to the question where we've simply asked, okay, well, what one action do you think leaders can take in the next 90 days to improve overall engagement? Forgive the simplicity of the question. Again, we just want to help you to become better leaders. So we've now got everybody in the business sharing with us ideas in a very confidential and anonymous manner. So you have no idea who's written these comments, but you will know their level of mindset. So against every comment, there's a colored box. That relates to the level of engagement of the individual that's given that comment. So where you have a green box, you have an employee who's highly engaged. Where you have an orange box, it's someone that may be slightly behind, so they feel fragmented individually, etc. But the unique part of the platform, and if you can just move on to the next tab for me, here we go. You can respond anonymously to any one of these comments. Now, don't worry about the one that's in front of you, but how many times as business leaders have you seen the results of a survey where your team are saying improved communication, for an example? Well, that's great, but what do they mean? Is it a WhatsApp group? Is it a monthly newsletter? Is it a team meeting? Is it individual communication? Is it anything specific? Often we're left batting in the dark. So with our platform, you'll be able to respond and say, wow, thank you for your comment. Thank you for your insight. Clearly, this is an area that we want to improve. As a reminder, this platform is completely anonymous. We have no idea who you are, but we want to get this right for you. So firstly, do you have any ideas Or is there anything specific you maybe like to see or you'd like us to share with you in a communication? Secondly, what does that communication look like? What this does, it makes it really easy. So it achieves two things. Number one, the impact on the employees that you've just demonstrated that they have an equal voice, an opportunity to share an opinion, but also that you're listening, you're learning, and you're willing to act. It's really important. But secondly, as a business, it enables you to capture the clarity. So when you're taking action and you're making these steps, it makes you incredibly efficient, both time and cost, because you get it right first time. In fact, the number one driver for Engagement Multiplier in our clients is the fact that we make you very targeted around the actions, but very effective with actions. Next slide, Greg. And then finally, the biggest mistake that most businesses make when they do take any kind of survey or capture any type of feedback is that they fail to connect effectively their team to those results. So at the click of a button, you're going to be able to share the overall engagement score, not broken down by level or group, that's for your eyes only, or those that you choose to share it with, but the overall engagement score. You'll set a goal for where you want it to go, but you'll also be able to present a statement of how you're going to get there. Ultimately, you'll say, we've listened, we've learned, as a result, these are the actions we're going to take, let's go have a great 90 days. Incredibly powerful. So think about that process. We've now given an employee a voice. We've captured all their insight. We've responded to those where we want to say thank you or get clarity. And now we've just shared a report to say, team, this is where we are as a business. This is where we want to get to, and this is how we're going to get there. It's an incredibly effective but efficient way to drive consistent improvements in your business. Next slide, Greg. So please, it's a simple, proven structure and framework that, number one, provides acceptance that we have to realize that this is real, get ahead and avoid any future nasty surprises. Number two, understanding ignorance is never a good business strategy. A lot of organizations say, well, I don't want to see this information every 90 days or whenever we repeat the process. Well, that's fine, but it doesn't make the problems disappear. They just hide under a rock and they fester. So please use our technology, our free engagement report, and use it as a COVID culture check. Communication is king. That is true all the time, but particularly right now. We know that employees are looking for clear, concise, accurate communication from business leaders now more than ever before. And where we can get that two-way communication through the platform, whilst anonymous, it's meaningful. And then finally, action. Knowledge is power, but only when applied. So we want to help you further. Our platform is packed full of success guides, and our white glove support is designed to help you not only just capture the data, but very quickly pick out those quick wins and do something meaningful with it. Next slide, Greg. So I want to just share with you, so it's great that I'm sat here telling you how wonderful we are. And like I say, please feel free to utilize the technology and decide yourselves how you perceive our technology. But here's a snapshot from just a couple of our clients that we're working with. And in fact, Greg, if you go to the next one, there's a case study here that we recently completed with a client. In fact, we did a webinar session with this particular client, I think it was November or December last year, where they only joined us in the middle of the pandemic. And as a result of the insights that they captured from the survey, and this is typical to many of our clients, they've achieved, it's had a six-figure impact on their business. Now, this is why I talk about, our platform's very different to most in that most like ours, it becomes a bit of a tick box exercise, helping the business understand what they want to hear, not necessarily what they need to hear. We're very different in that we want to drive positive business change. We want to create the actions that are going to deliver a significant improvement in your business, both from a productivity point of view, but also from a cash flow point of view as well. And this is a great example of exactly that. So moving on from that, Greg, so the next steps. So please, if you're on this call today or listening back to this recording and you're interested in what we're doing, please take a free survey, gain the clarity and confidence you need to be able to drive meaningful action. Follow the simple structure and frameworks that we're providing by our success guides. We're not making this up. We're learning from thousands of clients all over the world, all going through this same experience. And we're, part of our responsibility is to make sure that everyone is connected to that. Thirdly, be informed. Ignorance is never a strong business strategy. Let's understand what those conversations are that we're not yet connected to. Take action, make a difference, and add value to your client relationships. Next one, Greg. So in a moment, we're going to launch the final poll. It's a very simple poll. It's going to ask you 3 questions. In fact, Greg, if you want to get that live on the screen for me. The poll is, would you like to arrange a time to discuss Engagement Multiplier further with Steve? So it's one of 3. Yes, I'd like to arrange a call to understand more. Yes, I'd like to arrange a call because we'd like to take the free trial. Or thirdly, no, thank you. And please, if this isn't right for you, don't worry. I'm not going to be angry or upset if you press the 3rd option. But clearly, I want to make sure that those that want to have a conversation, that want to understand more, I'm able to connect with you after the webinar. And by clicking this box, you're also giving me permission to connect with you and have that conversation. So Greg, you're going to have to let me know when we've had everybody complete this, because I don't see the percentages on my screen.
Yeah, we're about 60% so far. So if you just, I'll give it a few more seconds. So yeah, thank you for that, Steve. I guess you mentioned that we use Engagement Multiplier ourselves, and we've definitely found it a useful tool to engage our team over the last 12 months. We, like some of those case studies, we got insights that we weren't expecting, and some of it was about providing the right support to our team throughout COVID. It might be making sure they got the right IT equipment, but it was more often about that human connection and enabling communication, not just from me telling them what's going on, although with the world on its upside down, like, people did want to know that the company was in a good position. People were concerned, they wanted to be reassured, but also team members just wanted to sort of have a mechanism to talk to other people and the rest of their team as well. So it definitely highlights things that you don't expect. So it's definitely worth doing one of these surveys.
I think with that as well, Greg, just quickly, what's quite interesting about, so people are obviously often nervous about what the team are going to request. I can tell you that the stat is well over 90% of the insights that you capture from the survey are going to cost you nothing. Okay, it's about systems, processes, structures, frameworks, and often, I'm sure as a business we all communicate, we all have meetings. But is there an opportunity to refine that communication, refine those meetings? So we're being more transparent, we're providing the data that your team actually want to see. And again, a real example of that, communication is king right now, as I said in the presentation. I had one set of results recently where a business with I think they had about 120 employees, and communication was by far the #1 theme that came through. And the business owner was saying, well, I don't understand how this is true. We communicate everything consistently throughout the business, and there lied the problem. It was a case of over communication, so the really important stuff was being lost in the midst of everything else. So a lot of the time, again, it's not about new things, it's not about anything that's going to cost any money, it's about structure, it's about framework, it's about taking what you're doing already and refining it, which again, it's against these small incremental changes that we make consistently that might have the difference. So Greg, I've seen quite a few questions coming through. So have we got some questions that we can, I think you've been capturing those throughout.
Yeah, so there's been quite a few coming through. So I'm going to start with a long one, so I'm going to read it out, so just bear with me a second. So we are struggling a bit with team engagement now that we've some employees back in the office and some working from home, and they go on to give an example. So during our team meeting this week, those of us in the office joined the meeting together from a conference room, and those working from home joined virtually. Even though only 5 people of the 19 team members were in person for the meeting, almost all of the conversation generated during the meeting came from those who were in the conference room, despite targeted questions to the remote participants. So this person found it difficult to get collaboration from the individuals who are attending virtually. Basically, they're asking, how do we continue to engage employees during meetings and team building when some of the staff join together and some are joining remotely?
This really interesting question, thank you. And actually, I agree, this is going to be a growing challenge because, and I'll talk from experience. So we've got 3 offices at Engagement Multiplier, 2 in the UK and 1 in Chicago. Our Chicago team now are all vaccinated and back in the office because that's what they want to do. We have exactly that challenge where we've now got half a team who are sat around a boardroom having open conversation, open dialogue, and then a UK team that are dialing in from all our remote offices all over the four corners of the UK. And in fact, we found it easier when everybody was remote than it is having half the team now working collectively and half the team remote. So I'm not saying I've got the solution here, but one of the things that we did immediately, and this only happened last week, so this is really, relevant. We immediately knew that it didn't work out the way we hoped it would. So we immediately sent out a survey to our team and said, team, it was great to see you all. We found it, it was great to connect. However, we want to make that experience better. We want to improve. Now, in the UK, our offices aren't going to open until mid-June. That's the date that we've set. And even then, it's optional in terms of which employees want to get in. And whilst we will encourage, particularly when it's team meetings like that, that everyone's together in the collective offices, it won't always be true. So we have sent out a survey to the team to say, what ideas have you got in order to improve that? Now, I'm going to be honest and say I haven't got the results of that survey, but the team have. So if you can bring yourself forward, or again, Greg, I don't know if you've got that person that's asked that question, I'll be more than happy to share with you the insights that we've captured from that survey. But equally, I'll probably suggest you do the same thing. Go back to your team, just be transparent and say, look, it's a challenge that we're all going to be facing. It's not going to go away. In fact, it's going to become a greater challenge as we continue. So find out from your team members, how can we have more, energizing conversation meetings where we have that split amongst teams in the office together and those that are remote? Because the point I'm making is that your teams will have the answer. As leaders, there's this great misconception that we have to have all the answers and we have to get everything right first time. You couldn't be further from the truth. As leaders, our role is to inspire our teams to come forward with those ideas. And then as leaders, we're there to facilitate, pick out the ones that are really valuable and do something meaningful with it. And again, that's one of the things that, again, if the free trials of interest to you, we can build those questions in for you, no problem at all.
Yeah, so that's great, Steve. So the next one's sort of a similar vein. So our company is working fully remote right now, and that may stay that way permanently. So they're talking about not even going back to the office. So how can Engagement Multiplier help encourage productivity with those people working from home?
Yeah, a great question, thank you. So I think this is something we need to be, and this was something I mentioned during the presentation. There are lots of organizations who are now choosing to remain remote as workers. In principle, there's nothing wrong with that. I think what we've proven over the last 12 months is we can work very effectively whilst we're working remotely. But there are a couple of things that we need to be mindful of. And this falls very much into fatigue to start off with. When an employee is working on their own for an extended period of time, it gets harder to be up and ready for work at 9 o'clock in the morning. And it gets harder to stay productive post 2 o'clock in the afternoon, particularly with all the distractions you have of a home working environment as well. So we need to find ways to stimulate our team. So normally when you're together in a collective audience or as there's a natural stimulant you get from having people around you and from activity. So the fact that that's gone, we need to find ways to consistently keep our team energized. And this is where Engagement Multiplier will help you. And again, I'll give you an example. Greg, you'll know this. When we first went into lockdown at Engagement Multiplier, we started having daily calls, and they're still very true today. We have them every morning, pre-9 o'clock, and we have one every evening at 5 o'clock in the UK. And again, same in the US, obviously 5-6 hours behind, depending on the time zone. And the idea behind those meetings is two things. One, to give people a start to the day, to make sure they're energized. We share a positive focus. And in fact, within our technology, there is there's a guide which is how to have epic online meetings. It's brilliant, okay? But also at the end of the day, it's to close the day off. Because working remotely, you can often just continue way into 8-9 o'clock at night because again, you haven't got that natural shut off that you would have in an office environment. But one thing is absolutely true is that when you create a structure that works, don't think that that's it forever. Be willing to adapt and change, and that's where the platform will help you. So with Engagement Multiplier, our meetings have been incredibly valuable throughout, but they're very different today to what they were 12 months ago. And in fact, we're just about to change them again because we're keeping them fresh, we're keeping them real, we're keeping them, again, we're being very different with them to make sure that they don't become just structure and framework and something that people get fatigued with very quickly. So our platform will help you get ahead of the curve when things are starting to get a bit tired, but also people will feel they have the opportunity to come forward and say, about those morning meetings we have, or about this, or about the other, I think there's now an opportunity to make them better or improve them, or feeling a bit fatigued with them, so you can stay ahead of the curve consistently. But also, and the final point here, and this is a really great question, because one of the things that our platform promotes is a consistent approach to measuring and improving engagement. Often, particularly when you have a highly engaged workforce, it can fluctuate. And so again, what our platform will do every 90 days, it almost acts like that health check. Have our scores gone up? Have they gone down? Stayed the same? If they go down, then we can react. And we know that we need to focus a little bit more, because even as a highly engaged team, things aren't perfect all the time. And by the way, I still haven't ever met the perfect organization. We can all learn and improve.
Yeah, I think it's absolutely right, Steve. So, I mean, we've done it ourselves, and we've been fortunate. Our scores have been going up. We've got one live right now, so it'll be interesting to see where we're at. But I think it does pull through themes that you don't expect, as I mentioned before. So, we've pulled out some ideas and increased productivity from that. But partly, sometimes it's stop doing things rather than start doing things, as you mentioned earlier. So. Thank you. So one question was, I'm really busy right now. So is now the best time to run this survey?
We're always really busy, is my first response. There's always 1,000 reasons for why we shouldn't do a survey. I suppose the good news is that what we know about typical systems and surveys is that they become very clunky, they're hard work, they're a lot of effort. So one of the things that our platform will give you is we simplify the whole process. Ultimately, you could come back to us and say, Steve, we want to get the survey live tomorrow. All we need from you are your names and email addresses of your team, and we'll press go. There's nothing actually you need to do to get it live. So again, we simplify the process. So when you are really busy, you can get it in. But also when you're busy, okay, and we talk about, if you're an axeman in a forest, and you're chopping down trees and your axe is blunt, okay, you're spending more time on each tree, and actually your efficiency levels go down and down and down. Sometimes you just need to stop and reflect, sharpen the blade, so when you then go back, you're more effective and more efficient. So whilst you're very busy, and again, just to give you an example, Engagement Multiplier, because of everything that's going on in the world, we've been busier this year than we've ever been in our history. In fact, April, we saw more surveys go live than we've ever seen in our history, by some margin. But we still find time to stop and reflect and think, okay, are there ways in which we can improve? Because when we're busy, that's when we need to drive those efficiencies. And it's about those 0.1% consistently throughout the business. So to answer the question, I think you'll find it really simple and really easy. So it's not going to take much of your time. But equally, when you are really busy, now is the time to get that data, because now is the time when people are stressed. That's where they're going to be able to share with you their frustrations. And that's the opportunity then to get ahead of those frustrations and think, actually, how can we make this quicker and easier for us and for our team?
Great, thank you. So I think we've got time for one more question. So it was more about what type of clients do you work with? So this person went on to say that they've got 29 staff at the moment and they think they know them well. What else do you think that they would learn from doing a survey?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because, and not to single any of you out there on this call today, but Engagement Multiplier is built for a very specific audience. In fact, how we describe them is as brave, caring, identifiable owners and leaders of growth-focused businesses. So what does that mean? Well, typically it means we're working with owner-managed businesses, which have 10, 20, 50, 100, maybe up to 200, 500 employees. That's our sweet spot. And the reason why, so where you have 29 employees, I think you said there, Greg, where in your example, you've got 29 employees, you're in a very unique position and it's exciting for us where you can give everybody an equal voice, an opportunity to share their opinion, their insights, that you couldn't do if you had an organization with 10,000 people in it. So the opportunity is far greater for you than it is for the large organizations. And how are you going to benefit? Well, you've got 29 people collectively sharing ideas of how we can drive the business forward, rather than just the business owner or the business leaders. And as leaders, you can capture that data, and it might just be one idea that comes throughout the entire platform that transforms your business. And an example of that, by the way, that I can give you, this was a few years ago, a company in the US that had just 25 people. There was an idea that came through our platform that had $1 million impact on the bottom line of that business. Now, some years later, they found out who actually gave that comment. And at the time, it came from an employee that had been in the business for less than 2 weeks at the time of completing the survey. They worked in customer services. They weren't very confident, so they would never have shared that idea through their manager, and definitely not with the business owner. Now, clearly, had they not done the survey, that's $1 million that would have been wiped off the potential of their business. So that's an extreme example. I'm not saying you're all going to make $1 million as a result of Engagement Multiplier, but they're the type of insights that can often come through a platform like this, even when the team's smaller.
Yeah, definitely. So thanks for those questions. If you do have any more, then we've got some slides at the end to sort of prompt you to ask them to us, and we'll forward them on to Steve. Steve, there are a couple of more slides that you've got here, so just one on the screen now.
Yeah, again, so this comes back to the sense of belonging. We're calling this the era of belonging, and it falls into 3 areas. The why. So what's the purpose of our business? The reason why people get up in the morning, they're energized and focused. The what, so our values of which we abide by on a daily basis, and the how. How do we want your people to feel? Okay, and in Engagement Multiplier, we simplify this into one A4 piece of paper, which is the why. It's about improving the lives of owners and leaders and employees, whilst unlocking that hidden potential from within. That's why we exist as a business. The what, well, our values. We meet every day with IFACE, which is our acronym. Impact, fun, authenticity, caring, and enthusiasm. They're the values on which we operate. And how do we want, as a team, we have an obligation to how we want our team to feel working for Engagement Multiplier. And again, we simplify that. So if you want to create that sense of belonging, and our platform will help you to steer all 3 of these areas very, very quickly. Get the why, the what, the how.
Cool.
That's it. Thank you.
All right. We've done the polls. So thank you, Steve, for that. I just wanted to sort of run through some other webinars we're running. So we've been running some business support webinars that we'll send a link out after this webinar, and it's really about helping with mindset, cash flow, systems and processes, profitability, team and culture. They're all free to attend, so any business owners that wish to join, it's really valuable. We've had some great feedback so far. We've got 7 and we've obviously done 3 already. Then we've got some other webinars this month as well, more HR related, so how to deal with bullying and harassment in the workplace, and then coronavirus returning to work after lockdown. So that's more of a practical level rather than sort of the engagement of staff. It's more, have you done your COVID test, that kind of stuff. Those of you who've not joined our newsletters before, then please do. The link's on the screen, but we will send the link out afterwards as well, and we'll also include the link to Engagement Multiplier, so you could follow that up as well and take the trial. As I mentioned, if you do have any further questions, then I know Steve's email was on the screen as we went, but either email Steve directly or you can email us and we'll make sure Steve gets those questions. After the webinar, there will be a short survey for you to complete as well, so please provide your feedback. We're always trying to make these webinars as interactive as possible, but also useful for you all as well, so your feedback is important. And that just then leads me to say thank you once again to Steve for joining us. We've done quite a few webinars with Steve and his team now. I always find them really insightful and useful. And you probably picked up, we're a keen advocate of Engagement Multiplier. We use it within our business, and some of our clients are also using it now and getting measurable results as a result of it as well. So I encourage you all to take a free trial and reach out to Steve to do so. Just leave to say thank you, and we're going to end the webinar now.
Thank you, Greg. Thanks, guys.
Cheers.